I promise you, this isn't what it looks like. Today, I want to show you one of the ways I like to use up my old yellowed epoxy resin. I have here resin that's been sitting in my craft room for around 3 years, I'd say. Yeah, that's a long time. And the way I like using it up is by making samples of new pigments that I get. Earlier this year, I bought this gorgeous set of pigments. I just fell in love with the set of colors and I bought them for an idea for a video. But before I get to that video, I want to see what these pigments look like on black and white resin. I'm also going to take the opportunity to talk to you about resin's shelf life and how to dispose of resin properly because I haven't really touched on that in my videos and I think it's important information to share. So if you're interested in learning about that, let's get started. So I have here my handy dandy heart molds that are perfect for what I'm about to do here. And one mold is going to be for black tinted resin and the other will be for the white tinted resin. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take makeup brushes and dust each color into one of the hearts. And while I do that, let's talk about resin shelf life. I do want to put a disclaimer here that the information I'm about to share with you is information that I've read on the resin bottles I use, and it's also based on actual experience in seeing how my resins have degraded and aged over time. So, as far as the epoxies I use, most of them have a shelf life of a year, give or take, and it's highly recommended that you use your resin in that time frame. This does vary between different brands, different types of resin, and also how the resin is stored. The resin I'm using here, like I said, it's around 3 years old, but I noticed it's starting to really yellow around the 18-month mark. I don't know why resin yellows, but according to Google, it has something to do with the resin oxidizing, and I'm not sure what that means. Science was never my strongest subject, but yeah, resin yellowing seems to be one of the first signs that it's aging, and typically you see it first in the hardener. Now, when it comes to other resins, I'm not sure exactly what the shelf life is. I'm assuming it's a similar time frame for say polyurethane resin or UV resin, but don't quote me on that. I do know from personal experience that when it comes to UV resin, it can be quick. I've had bottles where the resin is perfect and then 2 to 3 months later, it's gone into a really thick jelly state. It's really weird, but if you're a resin crafter, keep all this in mind and try to use up your resins within a year so that your resin is as fresh as possible. Okay, so now that my molds are dusted, I can mix up the resin. I went ahead and dusted the other mold off camera to be quick, but each color is in the same spot in the mold. So far, I'm really loving how these pigments look. That dazzling diamond is absolutely gorgeous, and these pigments have really nice coverage too. Considering this resin is 3 years old and how yellow it is, you wouldn't know that it's old. It's actually mixing really nicely. Sorry, resin, for neglecting you. For this batch of resin, I'm going to tint it black and then I'll mix up another batch to tint it white. But as you can see, you can hide the yellowness of the resin by dyeing it black, so that's another way to use up any yellow resin you have. Let me know in the comments what you do with your old yellowed resin. Now, let's talk about how you should dispose of your epoxy resin when you are done with it, or for whatever reason you don't want to use it anymore. As we all know, resin is a chemical, and the right way to get rid of any unmixed resin is to take it to your local hazardous waste disposal depot. This is something that you have to see what's available to you in your area, but if you can't find the information online, you should contact your local city hall, or if you're in a smaller town, I assume it will be your town hall. But you should never throw out any unmixed, uncured resin in your garbage. The other thing you can do is mix up your resin like usual, let it cure, and then throw the cured lot in the garbage. Supposedly that's better, but in my opinion, the best thing to do is just mix it up, tint it black if it's gone yellowed, and make something useful or make something that you can decorate your home with. Going back to what I'm doing, I'm actually really surprised on how well the white pigment paste is hiding the yellowed resin as well. There is a slight yellowish tint to the white, but it actually looks pretty good. And maybe adding pigment paste is another way to go. Now I'll be back in the morning once all this resin has cured up. Okay, so all this resin has cured up and everything looks good. Everything feels cured. And I already went ahead and labeled all the hearts with the names of the pigments for my reference. And I also let a little bit of the resin cure on its own to show you how yellow it looks like once the resin was cured. It's interesting to see that straight on it doesn't look too bad, but from the side, that's where you can really see how yellow the piece is. I guess from the side, it's just way more concentrated. Now, as I demold these pieces, I'm going to do a little recap just because I think the information I shared in this video is important. So when it comes to epoxy resin shelf life, it seems to be around the 1 year to 18-month mark. Be sure to read the pamphlets that come with the resin that you buy to find out what the manufacturer says, but try using it up in that time frame. Resin does yellow over time, even once it's cured, which is unfortunate, but that's just the reality of resin. To dispose of your uncured resin, make sure you take it to your local hazardous waste depot, but if you don't have one near you, I would just recommend that you mix it up like usual, let it cure, and then throw the cured lot out. But keep in mind the depth of how much your resin can cure in one go so that your resin doesn't overheat in the process. I hope you've learned something in this video and that I've inspired you to find a way to use up your old yellowed resin. If you have any that is, I think making pigment samples is a great and useful way to use up the resin, and that way the resin just doesn't end up in a landfill somewhere. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please smash the like button. And if you'd like to see more resin videos that I've done, then please check out one of the videos that's on screen now. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!